I'm going to turn up my mic. All right, so I can see that I am talking now. Awesome. Hello, everyone. I'm Bentley, and that is Matt. Let's see which Matt is that direction. And we are both located in New York City today. Thanks for tuning in. We are here to build a new power-up on Trello. So we're pretty excited about that. Matt is going to be driving, and I will be a bad pair, I'm sure. I will be here to joke. Cool. So Matt, let's see, looking at your screen, actually, it looks like we're only using half of your screen. Do you want to maximize?
Oh, don't worry. We will be using more of this screen shortly.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure. So what are we building today, Matt?
Yeah, today we are going to be making a little power-up that will augment Trello's recently launched Maps power-up and give us some weather details for locations that you add to cards. And counter to what our documentation tells you to do when you build a power-up, we are going to start from scratch. So we're going to ignore the rules. We're going to start from scratch. Truly nothing. We have nothing ready. And we're going to go from 0 to hopefully a full power up in the course of this stream.
Sweet. Let's get started.
Awesome. All right. So let me kind of set the stage here with what I have created before the stream. So what we have created before the stream is a new GitHub repo. This repo is totally open source. You'll be able to we'll share out a link to this at the end. But at the moment, it's got nothing in it except for what GitHub initially throws in a new repo for you.
Just the commit you made late last night.
Yeah, don't look at when this was made. Nobody needs to judge me based on the time I commit things. But what we need to do is we need to bring this code and bring it down locally onto this machine. So I'm going to start by cloning this new repo onto this machine, and then we're going to switch over to it. I called it Weather Powerup. And then this is going to be the last we'll see of this terminal as we bring up the code that is in there. All right, let's kill that guy. So now we've got our tiny little repo open here. Again, truly nothing in here. We're going to bring up a terminal down here so that we can start off and initialize this guy. So what we're going to do, we're going to get Node installed. So you may already have Node installed. Node, if we pop this up, is it node.org? Hey, good guess. Node is just a JavaScript kind of server framework. We're not really going to be using the server portion of it, but we do need it to kind of build our code. So we'll see where we start to use it. So we just installed the latest, which is 12.2. That's good. We're ready to get started. The next kind of incantation we're going to utter here to kick us off is yarn init. This is because we wanted to ask us some questions. All right, so the first question asks us, what do we want to call this? I think Weather Powerup is a pretty reasonable name, so we're going to stick with that. Version 1.0.0, fine with me. Let's give it a description. A small weather power-up for Trello. Let's not worry about the entry point just yet. Repository URL, I am the author. Stick with the MIT license. It's not private. Cool, so what that's done for us is it's created a fourth file here, which, again, if you're familiar with Node and JavaScript, this will be very familiar with for you. If you're not, this is going to be kind of our configuration file. It tells the system, it'll tell kind of where we're deploying, what packages we need, what incantations it needs to utter in order to build some things. So the first thing that we're going to add to this so that we can kind of kick off is we'll need something so that when we start writing our files, it'll kind of bundle them together for us. So the easiest one that I've found to do that with the least number of incantations and files is a thing called parcel. So this is what we're going to grab and use. So we're going to do yarn add, telling yarn, hey, we need this guy. And this guy is called parcel bundler. And what we'll see here is this is going to automatically kind of augment this file, this package.json file, and it's going to tell the file, hey, we depend upon this thing called parcel bundler. Perfect. So there we go. We've got a new section that says we depend on this. That's great. We're going to add one more section, which is going to be our full incantations to tell it how do we build this guy. So we're going to call it build. And this will all make sense in a bit. When we start building something, we're just kind of building the framework here so that we can build something. So we'll just say that we want it to run parcel build. And right now we don't have anything, but we'll tell it that what we'll probably have is we'll have a source file, and that will have some HTML. So go off and build those files. So let's create this structure that we just said here. So to do that, we're going to create a folder called source. This is where we're going to put all of our code that we don't have yet. Inside of that guy, we said we'd have a folder called HTML for our pages. Let's go ahead and create an index HTML in there. We'll come back to that guy. And then we're going to create, let's start off with one more folder for a little bit of JavaScript. And let's create a thing. We'll call it connector in there. All right, we've got some blank files here, but that's better than nothing. So if we want to see that our build script that we've written here is going to work, to run any scripts that I've kind of defined up in here, all I'm going to do is type yarn and then the name of the thing. So in this case, we've called it build.
Hey, Matt, can you bump up your text size?
Oh, I can. Let's click it up. Let's go 2 clicks. How's that?
Better, thank you.
We can always do a 3rd click if we need. Let's make everything a little bigger here. All right, but this is good. Green is good. It says that it built our stuff and it put it in this folder called dist. So now we've got another folder here called dist, and it built a little index HTML. Empty. That's fine. All right, so we're off to the races, but we want to do a little bit more weird waving of our hands magic, and we don't want, so we've got this in GitHub, which means we're going to be kind of committing our changes as we go, and we don't really want GitHub to know or care about this .cache folder or this dist folder. Like those are just for building things. We don't need to commit those. So all we're going to do is pop in here to the git.gitignore file that GitHub made for us, and we're going to tell it to ignore these things. So we'll say parcel.js cache folder, that's .cache. And we'll say parcel.js build folder, and that was dist. All right, oops, yes, dist. So now if we look here, kind of what our changes are that we haven't yet committed to GitHub, we've got our new package JSON and yarn lock. We've got our changes to gitignore, and we've got our empty files. So that's looking good. We're not over committing here. So next up, we're going to add one more package, and this will kind of, we'll leave this out until later. We'll come back to it. But we need to now actually fill in some content for these guys. So the way Power-Ups work, and we'll kind of pull this guy up here, is Trello is going to load your Power-Up. Your Power-Up, essentially, think of it like a website, but Trello is going to load that website into the Trello website, and then it's going to talk to it. It's going to load it totally hidden and kind of ask questions of it. So that we can kind of set this whole thing up, we're going to do a couple things. First, we need a place for this website to live. Right now, it doesn't have a home. It's just sitting on my local machine. And you have truly a wealth of options for where to put this. And Trello has a couple samples for you, both on a product called Glitch, as well as using GitHub pages. So for this, we're actually going to ignore both of those, and we're going to try something new. And we're going to use a product called Netlify, and we'll point that at our Git repo. So to get started, let's get this stuff committed. So I'm just going to stage this stuff up, and I'm going to write a nice commit message here that says initial set of dependencies and source files. Call that right. And we'll use Visual Studio Code here just to commit that. And then we'll tell it to push that. And so we'll check that this has worked because we'll come over here to our Git repo and we're going to check that it's got our new stuff. All right, good sign. We've got our source folder. We've got everything here. We're off to the races. So the thing that we're going to use in order to host our site for this one is called Netlify. And so what we're going to do is I've already signed into Netlify, and we're going to say that we want to create a new site from Git. We've got it on GitHub, so let's click that button. Now we need to pick what is it. So let's search for our weather. Is that not what we called it? Oh, it's in Trello. Let's switch to Trello. Not everything's easy around here. All right, where is?
Maybe is it?
Is it private?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it public?
Private.
That shouldn't matter, right? I assume Netlify is using your.
I assume so too, but let's see if we can't make this guy. Nope, definitely public because it says that we could make it private. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, I see it.
Good, public is good. Let's see.
Let me do a refresh.
Refresh might be a good idea. Let's try. We can always move it. So let's switch back to Trello and let's try add. We're going to just move this out of the screen here for.
We could always, if we want to run it locally with ngrok to expose it to.
We could, but it turns out that I had only given Netlify access to, I didn't give it access to all of Trello. I'm sure that my bosses will be happy that I did not do that. I was giving access on an individual basis, so I've given it access to the weather power. All right, so now we told it that's the repository that we wanted to build. We're gonna just keep the master branch. Let's not worry about branches. We need to tell it how to build this though. And so you saw us do that with yarn build. So we're going to say the exact same thing. And then it needs to know where is our site going to live. And it already kind of knows. You can see it over here. It's right. It's going to live in the dist folder. That's it. That's the full setup there. So we'll click deploy site. And now we're pretty much done. As far as Netlify is concerned, we may come back later. But I think one thing we can do for ourselves is let's give it a little bit of a better name. So let's just swap its name out here. And we'll call it Weather Power Up. Good, nobody had taken that name. All right, now we've got our Power Up living somewhere. And that's enough for us to now go tell Trello about it. So let's do that. So I've got this new Trello account here, Luis Belcher, who just kind of joined Trello. And so what Luis needs to do is Luis needs to make a team because power-ups are owned by Trello teams. And Luis doesn't have a team yet. So we're going to use this create team button here. And we'll call this Luis Trello team. Awesome. So now Luis has this team. We'll even make a board that we can use for this power-up as we test it. Let's call it National Parks.
Matt's favorite example topic.
Oh, of course. Good, better, best. That seems like a good set of lists. And we'll come back and fill this in just in a minute. But what we need to do now that we've got our board and our team set up as Luis is we need to go register this power up with Trello. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to just use this one here. And we're going to come down to the administration for Trello power-ups. So what we've got is we only have one team, Luis's Trello team. So let's come into that. I'm going to go ahead and agree to those terms. And right now I have no power-ups. That kind of makes sense. So let's create one. All right, we've got some questions to answer. So let's give it a name. Let's call it weather. We don't know what these are yet, so we're just going to toggle one off and we'll come back and we'll actually toggle more on later. All right, now we need to give it the URL. So let's come back to Netlify and get what our URL was. So here's our URL. So let's copy link, come back to Trello, and let's give it that URL. The nice thing about Netlify, and this is true, of course, of Glitch and of GitHub Pages, right, is we get a secure HTTPS URL right out of the gate. So let's click done here. Perfect. We could fill out a lot more. We'll come back and maybe make that nicer later, but we've got a power up. So let's go back. Let's go to our boards and see where that puts us. So we've got Luis's National Parks board. Let's even, why not? We can make this a little bit better. This feels more national parky to me. Kind of feels Patagonia to me, but close enough. All right, so let's add some cards. So what we're going to need to do, the weather power up is going to rely on cards having location data. So let's actually start by giving some cards locations. I mentioned that we'd be using Trello's recently launched map power up, so we can add some locations to cards. So let's kind of set ourselves up here. Let's add Glacier National Park. And now we can set the location on this guy, Glacier National Park. Yeah, that's in Glacier National Park, that'll do. All right, so we've got a card. That card has a location. That's pretty much enough for us to get started. The last thing that we're going to want to do here is we're going to add one more. So when you make a power up, right, and it is going to land and turn it on for your team, it's going to land here in this custom section, right? It's just available to you and your team. If Bentley was to go and look at his boards and he looked at custom, he'd see whatever he has, but he would not see our weather power up. So let's go ahead and add our new weather power up to our board here. And right now it's empty, so it's not going to do anything. So that's okay. So let's come back and we need to make it do a little bit of something. So let's come back and we're going to bring up our docs again. And the thing we're going to look at now for power-ups is I think the capability we're going to want to start with is one called card badges. So let me make this a little bigger. A little bigger still. There we go. Let's come back to that. So card badges. So what in my head, what I kind of want this power up to do is for these cards that have a location data, what if we could kind of show the current temperature and weather right on the front of the card? And that's what card badges is good for. It lets us kind of add 0 or more of these little badges to the front of card with whatever icon we want and whatever text that we want. So that's what we want. How do we get to what we want? Well, what we need to do, and we'll kind of see some source code here, is we need to initialize our power up, and then we're going to go ahead and declare the capabilities that we want. This code gets all weird when your monitor is super zoomed in. It'll be easier to read if you when you view it on your own machine. But this is kind of what we're going to try to do. So let's grab this. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our JavaScript file here, and this is going to do our power up initializing. And I said the one thing we were going to want to do to start is card badges. So just kind of copying from the left-hand side there what the signature should look like. All right, and then in here, we want to return an array of card badges. Cool. So we need to reference this script from the actual page that Trello is loading. So let's do that here. Oh, interesting. And we're going to do one other trick here, which we haven't seen yet, which is that in order for power-ups to kind of talk back and forth, we need to load a script from Trello. So let's take a look at how some of Trello's sample projects do that so that we can do the same over here. Let's actually, go ahead.
Oh yeah, there you go. I was gonna say the Skeleton project also has it. Bare bones.
Oh, look at that. This is exactly the snippet we're looking for. Good.
Free code.
Copy paste. Excellent. Excellent. Oh, it's nice. We've got some little UTF-8 meta tag here, and then we've got our scripts. So the trick here, right, is this one is the library that talks back and forth between Trello and our power up. And then here we're going to need to modify this a little bit because that's not what we called it. Ours lives in JavaScript connector. And all we're going to do here is we're also going to say cross origin anonymous. All right, so what we've done is we've said load this script, which is Trello's connector script. And then once you've loaded that, load this script. And this is the script that we are currently writing, which is going to call into the function that the object that connector script puts on our page. It's going to give this guy, we're actually going to, we'll return nothing just yet. But to make sure that we've actually got this working, we're going to cheat a little bit. And we're going to just print out hello world so we can know that everything is being loaded. All right, so now we need to get this from our local machine where it lives now back up into the cloud so that Netlify can take it and deploy it. So let's give that a shot. We're going to stage these guys for commit. And we're going to say that we added Trello connector script and initial source. Of course, too long. Okay. All right, we're going to push that up. And then to see that that's working, we're going to pop back over here. And we can see, good, it's queued up a deploy. And there's our commit message. So we know it's picked the right thing off. We can even watch it. See, it should only take about a few seconds. Oh, I think we've failed. So let's look at what we failed. So let's do a yarn, same thing that Netlify is doing. Let's do that over here. See if we can get that same error. Good. So because we put our HTML, it's looking in a folder HTML JavaScript. So that's not where our JavaScript lives. So what we need to do is tell it that it's got to go up first. It's got to go up, and then it can go over to find the JavaScript file. So let's test this locally, make sure that we fixed the bug. Good. We're back to green. And while we're at it, we're going to add one more file so that Netlify, which if we can look here, is using the same version of Node that we are. We kind of want to be on the same page. And the way that Netlify does this, right, and each thing might be different. Sometimes it'll be in the engines field for your package JSON, but in the case of Netlify, they want you to use an NVMRC file. And we're just going to tell it that we use Node version 12 locally. You should match us and use that over there. So let's go ahead and push that up. So we're going to stage this guy. Let's start with this guy. This, of course, will fail. So we're going to say add NVMRC file to use Node 12. And then we're going to say source work. And let's go and push both of those up and see if we fixed our problem. All right, our last one failed. We've got a new one queued up. All right, this time it's using the same version of Node that we are. That's good. Now we're on the same page. Of course, it's going through the same rigmarole that we have locally. It's got to go ahead and install those same yarn dependencies that we've installed. And then once it has, it can use them and it can run our build script. Good. So this time we've built successfully and it's all done. Perfect. So let's come back over to Trello. So we've got our board here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to open up our terminal where we're going to find all our errors. And we need to reload Trello, so that Trello is going to reload our power up. And nothing. So we didn't print anything out to the console. So let's take a look and see what Trello has loaded here.
I think it's, did you turn on the capability?
Ah, Bentley, smart man.
That's what I'm here for. Got to turn on the capability. Always catches you.
Always catches you. Tis silly. All right, so what Bentley was saying is we had skipped this step before, but we do, in fact, need to tell Trello what we want. So what we said we want is card badges, so let's tell Trello that what we want is card badges. We're going to save that guy. And we're going to pop back over. Look at this. We've got 2 of these boards. We only need 1. All right, let's try it again, see if Bentley was right. Oh, look at that. Bentley was indeed right.
It's rare. It's rare.
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, that's some good trivia. So the reason that this didn't load last time is that Trello will only load your power-up if it needs to load your power-up. So if you've declared no capabilities, then it's not even going to go ahead and try to load the power-up because, well, it has nothing to ask of you, so it's not going to load you to ask you nothing. In this case, we did say that we want it to ask us for card badges. There's a card on this board, so it needs to load us so that it could ask us if we want to display any card badges. All right, so let's learn a little bit more about what card badges is actually doing. So let's come back to where we told it. Right now, we've got it just kind of giving back nothing, and that's fine. But we want to learn a little bit more about this card. So let's look at what we can ask Trello for. So when it comes to power-ups, we'll click in here. The client library, right? This is this Trello power-up thing that we've loaded. Comes kind of built in with a whole bunch of helpful methods that we can do to ask questions of Trello. So in this case, we want to learn more about the card that we're about to show badges for. So what we're going to look for is t.card. All right, so we can, looks like the example is perfect for us. So with the card badges function, we can ask for t.card, and then we can kind of see what that will give us. So I like that. Let's give that a go. So instead, we're going to return t.card. Let's start by asking for everything, and we'll go from there. And then, so this is going to return what in JavaScript land is referred to as a promise. So we need to kind of say, well, once that's done, then what do I want to do? So we're going to say, then after that's all done, I want to take the card information that you just gave me. We're just going to print that out. We're going to take a look at what that looks like. And we're still going to tell Trello, like, it's okay, I don't want to show a badge. Actually, let's make that a little bit. Why not? Let's show a badge. So let's see, what do we need in order to show a badge? What does a badge look like to Trello? All right, so a badge has these properties, some text, an icon, some color. So let's just give it some text. And let's have the badge, let's see. I think we can just have it be, what we get here? We get a lot of things. Let's do its ID short. So we'll have the badge be card.id short. All right, so we've modified that. Let's go ahead and push this up and see where that puts us. Load card for card badges. All right, and then if this works, we should be able to load up the coordinates, and that will let us start querying for some weather data. So let's go take a look. This guy should be publishing our site, and it is. And it's building, so let's come over to Trello. Yep, looks like it's all built. So let's come back over to Trello. We've got our one card, which we're gonna refresh. All right, so we don't see our badge on this card, so we'll have to figure that, but we do have some helpful information down here because we've got what the card looks like. So let's see, we've got the address on the card. The card doesn't have any attachments, some badges, closed. Its ID short is 1. Its location, its name, short link. All right. So I think that's enough to get us going. So let's then switch over and let's figure out how to query for some weather. So what I've done is I've signed up for Open Weather Map. This is just a free, well, they have a free tier to load some weather data given coordinates. So we're gonna start using this current weather data API, which I've already got here in Postman. So we can kind of look at what this guy gives back. So what we're going to do, so our card, so in order for us to load any weather about the card at all, we'll kind of stick with loading everything about the card. Let's be good citizens here, and we're only going to ask for what we need. So if we come back, the only thing that we need to load the weather about a card is the coordinates of the card. So let's just ask for that. Let's actually edit it in here. So we're going to ask for the coordinates. All right, we'll leave our log there so we can make sure that we're getting the right thing. But now we need to check, does this card have coordinates, right? Because not every card is necessarily going to have a location added to it. So let's check. If the card has coordinates, then we need to load the weather data. Otherwise, we will return nothing, because we're not going to show weather data on cards that don't have a location. So here, our card has a location. Let's fetch weather. So let's give that a try. So we have our coordinates. If we look at how we formulate this, we're just going to bring this whole guy in here, and we'll kind of work it out from there. So we've got this address, and we want to fetch some data from that. So we're going to use a browser API called fetch, so we can pull that up so that we can see what we're doing. And what we want to do, MDN, you're not as helpful as I thought you'd be on. Let's try using fetch. Hey, there we go. I just want some code that I can copy and paste, really. Or in this case, look at and write out our own one. All right, so we've got our URL, so we can ask it to fetch that. This guy here, well, we're on a stream, so it's not a secret anymore, but this is essentially a secret, right? This is my key to the Open Weather Map kingdom, right? Especially this would be more important if I was paying for these requests, right? I don't want this kind of checked into this open source repo that everyone can see. So we're going to swap that guy out. So we're going to just cut that out, and we want to replace this with the right value. So what we're going to use to do that is we're going to use our little parcel bundler tool, and we're going to replace it with something called an environment variable. So what we're going to do is we'll call this app ID, and we'll come back and we'll figure out how to get that to fill in appropriately. But let's finish out the rest of our fetch function here. So fetch, like the Trello API stuff here, returns a promise. So we need to kind of wait for it and then say after that, then what are we going to do? So we want to take the response that it gives us. We're going to just hope that it comes back looking good, take it as JSON. Then once we have the JSON, we'll call that weather data. All right, so now we've got this thing called weather data. Let's look at what that's going to look like. So we've got it here. So we've got this nice little object that's got a whole bunch of data. Of course, what we should do is not hard code our latitude and longitude. So what we need, let's come back to Trello and see what the coordinates on that card looked like. Here's our coordinates, and that's an object of latitude and longitude. So let's do that. So let's say const latitude, longitude, coordinates. So now we're just using some fancy JavaScript to get us these two variables, which we're then going to go ahead and we're going to replace them in this string. So that way, for each card, we'll be using the right latitude. So that's this guy. That's our latitude, and then our longitude. Awesome. Now we're going to make a request for the right latitude and longitude for each card. We're going to figure out how to give it this app ID. Once we get the response, we're going to interpret it. And then now we've got our interpreted response. We need to create this badge. So we're going to bring this up one more time here. See if we can make this a little bigger. Indeed, we can. So I think what we want is this. And it must be that that's in Kelvin. Otherwise, it is very hot in Hudson County right now.
You don't want to include wind speed?
Unbearably hot. You know, we might include wind speed. Well, we can do as many badges as we want, Bentley. You know, you tell me what you want, and we'll make it happen. So let's go ahead and start. So we can return a whole array of these guys. So we'll do one, and we'll do this as temperature. So well, we're going to do it in Kelvin for right now, and then we'll figure out how to change that later. So we want this to be our weather data, and we saw that this is going to be .main and then .temp. Awesome. So now we've got one that's our temperature, and yeah, sure. Let's get some wind speed in there. So we're going to do weather data, and this one lives under wind and speed. And it's a good start. So let's see where this gets us. So we want to return this guy. All right, so when Trello calls for our badges, we're going to return promise. When this promise completes, we'll end up in here. We'll look and see, does this card have coordinates? If it does have coordinates, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to return another promise, which is going to fetch our weather data. It's going to take the response, interpret it as JSON, take that JSON, and give back to Trello, finally, the badges that we wanted to show. So that's looking good. Let's just toString this just to be, who knows? I don't remember I think Trello was fine with numbers, but we'll give it some strings. All right, so the last bit that we need to come back to is how do we get this guy in here? And so the way that we're going to do that is with something called environment variables. So first, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to add a little parcel plugin. So remember, parcels are our bundler here. We're going to add a plugin that knows how to fill these guys in. So percentage something, percentage. It's going to fill that in with the environment variable. So, but where do we put that environment variable, right? If we don't want to check this guy into GitHub, in this case, right, and this will vary by service. In this case, we need to tell Netlify about it. So let's do that. So we're going to come to build and deploy. It's got this whole environment section. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our variable here. So let's go ahead and grab ours. So our app ID is this guy. And let's edit these things. So we want to add one called app_ID, and then that's its value. Good. So we're going to save that guy. And now we can go ahead and we can commit our changes here. So we're going to say fetch weather data for card badges. All right, we're pushing that guy up to GitHub. So let's go ahead and we can see how GitHub is coming. All right, we're already at 7 commits. And here's our latest fetch weather data for card badges. So let's double check the Netlify already hard at work building our deployment.
We're about to get the window washers going by.
Oh, this is exciting. Who knew? Who knew we'd have additional content like this? All right, all built successfully. Good sign. So we're done here. We can come back to Trello now. We're going to just clear this out so that we see what we get, and we're going to refresh this guy. All right, look at that. So we've got some numbers on the front of our card. 281.73 something or other and 3.1 something or other. We printed out our coordinates. All right, so let's also double check here that card that doesn't have a location, there we go, coordinates null, doesn't get anything. Perfect. And then if we give it a location, let's give it Yosemite. that. And there we go. It's got
Nice.
slightly different weather. All right, so we're off to the races, but I think we can make this look a little bit better. So let's pop back in here and let's see kind of the trick. So with card badges, we pop back here. Let's look at what else we can give back for a card badge. So color strikes me as something that seems very exciting to do, as well as icon, right? So we're already doing text. We can give it an icon and we can give it some color. So let's try to spice up our data here a little bit. So I think first is that we need some freedom units here instead of the Kelvin. So let's go from the Kelvin that we have to some degrees freedom. So let's do that. So we'll say const freedom units. And so we need some fancy formula to get that done. Certainly, I haven't looked this up in advance. Just had that memorized. All right, so we need to take our temperature, which we think is in Kelvin. And we're going to do some math on it. So we're going to take it, we're going to subtract a number, and that's going to give us our Fahrenheit.
I feel like we need some emojis in the badges.
Could use some emoji. Well, let's do that for wind. So actually, I have a suspicion we could get a pretty good emoji for the wind one. So let's go ahead. I don't think we need that. Oh, we do need that, actually. So we've got our wind speed. Let's put that in there. And then let's pop, like you distracted me. I was middle of freedom units over here.
I'm sorry.
Hold on, what's the, now I'm keyboard shortcutting off to, I know that there's no
option command space.
All right, hold on. I think this is, what is the emoji that we'd like to use? Wind emoji. We're gonna do this. This one seems like exactly what we want.
Wind face, perfect.
All right, so now we'll know that that is wind. We don't know what units is in, but we'll just have to, we'll sit with that. And then we're going to use, oh, is it in knots, or are we assuming it's in knots?
I'm assuming. I'm shooting from the hip here, Matt.
All right, knots it is. Is that how you spell knots? I don't know.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Good. So then let's get our temperature in. Oh, can we find a little degree icon? Oh, we can. That will make this, oh, look at that, degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so we've got our emoji here. I think we can still do better though. So let's come in here. And I think, indeed, so open weather map will actually give us a icon based on the current condition. So, hey, we're already adding badges left and right. What's the third badge? Let's do the condition. And this time we're going to get to give it an icon. All right, so you'll need to do a little Googling around to figure out what the URL format is for this guy. But suffice to say, we take the icon and we're going to replace that guy in there. So we've got our weather data. And this one, interestingly enough, this looks like it's under the weather header. And then that's an array. And then that will have an icon. All right, so we've got our weather data, weather, first one, icon. That's good. Now we want a little text to accompany that. So let's do that. And let's just call that weather data, weather. And we want, do we want the description or main? Let's do the shorter one because these are badges. We want to keep it a little short. All right. I think we're in business here. I think we've got 3 nice badges. Will it work? Who knows? Make our card badges a little more fun. All right, we're going to push that up. And this may complete our badges adventure, which may mean we can go to the other side of the card. So let's come over here, check that we've got that. Yep, we've got our commit. Let's come over to this guy. Again, already hard at work. The nice thing here, right? So again, we've said you have lots of options for hosting your power up. GitHub Pages is excellent. Glitches, great. Glitches especially good if you'd like to have a backend. Although like with Heroku, right, the free model, those will sleep. So you might have to wait a couple extra seconds for your power up here and there. Netlify puts your stuff behind a CDN, so this is great. There's no sleeping. It's always going to be fast, just like GitHub Pages. So we're all built here. So that means we're ready to refresh this guy and see where we're at. Look at that. We've got our little clear icon, our little emoji there, and we have a few too much. I would say we maybe have a little bit too much precision on our degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know. Bentley, can you feel, I don't know, what is that? Nano degree Fahrenheit? I feel like, maybe we can do better than that. So I think what we want is we want to chop that number down a little bit. So we're going to just come over here and let's just cut this number down. So we're going to do freedom units, which is our number. And we're just going to, I don't even think we need it to a decimal place. So we're going to just leave it as a fixed number. So that's great. We'll go ahead and we'll commit that. And we're going to go start working on some badges for the back of the card. So let's just say chop temperature to single digit usage. All right, we'll push that. We'll let that start building. But what we want to do now is we want to come back here. And the problem we have is that these are great. I now know right on the front of the card what the weather is, but if I open this, I lose it, right? Now I've kind of lost the context of like, what's the weather here? So what we want is we want to be able to show something on the back of the card. So we've got card badges for the front. What Trello kind of calls card, you might hear it referred to as the card back. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as the card detail. And if you do, well, that's where card detail badges comes from. So this lets us show little badges up at the top of the card, right? And this is kind of trying to emulate, if I gave this card a due date, right? That's a card detail badge right there. So we've already got all of our logic here. So this is good. But what we want is now we want to add a whole new capability. So we're going to do card detail badges. It's going to look very familiar. We don't even need ops. Oops. Key guy here. And we'll cut that guy down. And for now, we're going to take the lazy approach and we're just going to copy paste this guy. Awesome. So we're going to do the same thing. We need to ask for what are the coordinates on this card. Then once we've got the card, if it has coordinates, we're going to kind of go through the whole rigmarole again. We'll make this better. But for now, we'll just go through the rigmarole, we'll load it up, and then we'll return it back. But let's just double check. What does Trello want when it comes to card detail badges? So we've got a title, text. So what you'll notice here is what we've lost is, well, we don't get icons anymore. Instead, we get a title for the badge and then some text below it. So let's kind of adjust these guys to that model. So here we're going to say temp. That's what that guy's showing. Here will tell us in speed. And then we're going to swap out our icon here. And what is this? All right, so now we've implemented this guy. Bentley will be kind enough to remind us that we should probably go tell Trello that we want a new capability. So we're going to toggle that guy on, card detail badges. And let's go ahead and get this guy deployed as well. Add card detail badges capability. And we're going to go ahead and push that up. So let's see, can we get badges on the front and the back of the card within the hour mark? Well, let's see how quickly Netlify can build. Back here. All right, Netlify's all done with our build. Let's come back to Trello and let's see what we've made. So let's give this board a quick refresh. All right, things are looking a lot better, a lot more realistic. It's cold in Glacier National Park right now, 47 degrees, wind 3.1 knots, currently clear. Let's click on that. Hey, all right, now we don't lose that context when we come to the back of the card. We still have the temperature, still have the wind speed, we still have the conditions. That's great. Let's check this. Let's check this on a card. So we see coordinates are null. If we pop it open, no empty badges. That's all good. So it looks like we're handling everything just fine. Let's finish up for today by just kind of cleaning up what we've got, so that this is not a complete copy paste job, and that what we've got and what we're left with is something that we're happy with. Something to kind of keep in mind, right, is that this this API, while free, does have some restrictions. So the number of requests that we can make within a time period is limited. So we don't want to kind of abuse that or overuse it, because then we will get rate limited and our power won't look as nice. We want this to work for boards that have a whole bunch of cards on it. So we're gonna try to make this a little bit better, because we're happy with what we're showing right now. We're just not entirely happy with how we're doing it. So let's give that a try. So we're gonna drop this guy off, and we're gonna kind of write a whole new function here to do this work for us. So let's give that a try. So we'll have our fetch weather data. This will be a function that will take in our little t argument here. And what it's going to do is kind of the same. We're actually going to go ahead and copy the same logic here. It'll be the third time we've now copied and pasted this guy. All right, so our fetch weather data will take our t, and we want it to just kind of give back our weather data. So we want it to load the coordinates. We're gonna say if it has the coordinates, it's gonna go ahead and load this, and it's gonna return. Well, actually, we'll even have it add our temperature. So let's do that. So we'll even edit this. Weather data, main temp, formatted temperature, and we'll go ahead and put that in there. Awesome. So now what we're going to do, instead of returning the badges, we'll go ahead and return the weather data. And then otherwise, if the card doesn't have anything, we'll just go ahead and we'll return null, because there's nothing to give. The card doesn't have. So that's good. That gets us through most of this stuff, because now what we can do is we can return fetch weather data at our t. And now this guy's going to return that same promise. So we'll say, all right, once we get that back, have that same weather data. So what we need to do, right, what we've been doing is we've been taking that weather data and we've been converting it into badges. So what we're going to do is we'll write another function, const get badges for weather data. And that will take weather data. And it's also going to take a little Boolean here, which will let us know if it's the front or the back. Do we even need that? Nah, we're just going to combine them together. All right, so given weather data, we need to return these badges. So let's do that. Let's copy this guy. Slap that in there. So we need, wherever we put this, so we put this weather
temp.
Hmm?
Formatted temp.
Exactly, but it's under weather data, main formatted temp. Let's grab that guy. And we don't need any of this stuff anymore because we already put all that on there. So that's just going to be our formatted temperature, but we also want to, when we're showing it on the back, we need the title. So this is our temperature, which will have the formatted temperature. Then we need our wind speed title. So let's drop in the title for our wind speed. And then lastly, this guy swaps out for a title for conditions. So give this guy his title. All right, so given some weather data, this guy can format us some badges, so that's perfect. So now we're going to come in here and we'll say const badges equals get badges for weather data. Now what we should do is we should remember that sometimes this guy's going to be null, so we should handle that if weather data is null. There will be no badges, but if it's not, then we'll have some badges. So that's good. Now we're handling that null, and we've got these badges objects here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just give those back to Trello. And that lets us drop all of that. And we can take this same logic here. And we can apply that there. All right, we're nearly there. So let's start by making sure that all the changes that we've just made haven't broken anything. Seems like a good place to start. So we'll call this refactor badge fetch logic. Go ahead and we'll push that up. And then while that builds, the last thing that I want to do is I don't really want to be fetching this same data twice, right? I've already fetched it to display the front of the card. If you click and open the back of the card, it's kind of silly that I'm going to go make that same API request and fetch that data again. And what we can rely on here is actually kind of one of the neater and more helpful parts of Trello's Power Platform. You can store some data directly into Trello. So let's look at what that looks like. So let's come in here. And what we want is this guy, this t.set. So this lets us set some data at whatever this stuff means inside of Trello. And that's great. We can now use that as a cache for this data so that we're not going and refetching this data each time. So this is what we're going to use to kind of finish up our power up so that we're not hitting this API any harder than we absolutely need to be. So let's go and double check that we haven't broken anything, because that seems like the place to start. All right, that's already published. It's already waiting for us. All right, we have not broken anything. That's a good sign. Still got our badges on the front. Let's double check them on the back. Awesome, they're still there on the back. All right, we're in a good place. So now all we want to do is we want to make sure that when we fetch this weather data, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cache it, and we'll fetch it from the cache. So let's bring up our docs here for t.set. And so the way that t.set works is we're telling Trello, we're kind of storing data alongside objects inside of Trello. And so you can store data alongside the board, alongside a card, a member, or an organization, also known as a team. So for this, right, we're showing weather on cards, so we're going to store it alongside the card for which it's being displayed on. The other piece of this is whether you want Trello to store that private, just for this user to see, or shared, which means that anybody who can see the object that's stored alongside will be able to see and load this data. So in this case, right, this isn't sensitive personal data. This is just the weather information for the card. So we're going to say store it alongside the card, make it shared, and then we have essentially a key value store that we can store there up to 4K. So that's plenty of room for us for 4,000 characters worth of data. So let's go ahead and we're going to try to make some use of this. So once we store it there, t.set has its corollary, t.get, which lets us kind of fetch the data from wherever we stored it. So let's bring this guy up and let's finish up this power up. So when we fetch the weather data, what we're going to do here is we're actually going to fetch it from two potential places. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in Trello's. So we have window, Trello power up. Has a promise object on it. We can use that. This is actually a Bluebird promise instead of a native promise in the browser. This will kind of give us a couple extra helpful methods that we can use when we're fetching more than one promise at the same time. And so what we're going to do is we're going to batch this at the same time. So then when we load the card's coordinates, we're also going to load, we're going to make our request here and see, do we have a cached value? Let's do that. So we're going to say that what we want to actually load when we're fetching the weather data is we want to load all of these promises simultaneously. So we already said that t.card coordinates is a promise, so we're going to load that guy. But now we're also going to load our cached value. So we're going to do t.get, and I said that we were going to store that on the card. So we're storing it on the card, and we want it to be shared. And now, do I need to give it a key, or will it just give me everything if I don't? I think it'll just give me everything. So let's just ask for everything that's on the card and shared. So let's chop this. And now, because we're doing more than one thing at a time, we're just going to use a tricky little operator here called spread, which is going to take each of the responses from these promises and make it a separate argument to our function here. So we're loading the card first, so that's good. But now we're also loading our plugin data. We'll get both of these guys back. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, if the card doesn't have, we're going to switch this logic around a little bit. Check. The card doesn't have any coordinates right off the bat. Nothing to do. We're not even going to worry about whether there's cache data or not because there's no location for this card. So that's good. So we can drop this guy here. At this point, we know the card has some coordinates. So what can we do with that information? What we're going to do, so we know these are the coordinates of the card. What we want to do is check, because the coordinates of the card may change, right? So our cache data, if we have any, needs to be associated with the coordinates of that card. So we can throw it away if the location changes. So let's actually cache. What we're going to do is cache kind of a whole object worth of data. What we want to do is we want to look at this guy. Let's make a latitude and longitude string. So we'll say const location is this guy. And we're just going to take our latitude and our longitude, make a string of that. And we're going to say if we have some cached data, so we've got this plugin data, and that data has a location value that is equal to our location. So we have some cache data, and the cache data is for the right location. Now that's a good sign. And that data has a timestamp, because we only want to kind of cache it for, let's say, let's cache that data for 30 minutes. So the timestamp needs to be, what do we want that timestamp to be? So we'll do the timestamp when we set plugin data. We'll set the timestamp for, we'll do expired. So that'll make a bit more sense. So we'll say if it expires is less than date.now, right? That means it's already expired. So we don't actually want less than. So we want greater than or equal to date.now. So it has not, our cache data hasn't expired. It's for the right location. And plugin data, weather data, and we have some. So we've got all of this. Let's make this perhaps a bit shorter. Let's call it data. We'll call it cache. So we're all good to use our cache data. So what we're going to do is we'll just return cache.weather. This way, if we've got a cache still good, then we don't even need to call out to the API. We're just going to give you back the data that we've already cached. But otherwise, if it's already expired, then we got to do this. So all that means that we need to do is before we return this, we just want to store it in the cache so that it can be used. So let's do our t.set. So there's one last trick here. And that can get you hung up. I don't know if Bentley may or may not know it. So Or maybe are we on the same wavelength, Bentley? What might get you in trouble here if I just put here? I'll write it out and we'll see.
Because T-dot sets a promise, you want to make sure that you return the promise and have it resolve, and then pass back your weather data.
It is a promise, although we don't necessarily need to wait for it. We can kind of let it go asynchronously, and that'll be okay. But you might here. Let's write it out, and we'll see where might we get in trouble with this guy. So we want to set some data on the card. It's going to be shared data, and then the data that we want to set there is going to look like what we just described. So what we want this to look like, we want it to have that location property. We want it to have that expires property, which, as we said, is going to be date.now, but we're going to also add in date.now. This is in milliseconds. So there's 1,000, let's do this. It's 1,000 milliseconds in a second. There are 60 seconds in a minute. And we want to do this for 30 minutes. So we've stored that for 30 minutes, or we said it expires 30 minutes from now. And the last little piece here is our weather data. Hopefully, actually, weather data might be big, so we might be about to hit our 4K limit, and I will be shown to have been wrong there. But Bentley, when might this fail, or might it ever fail?
Oh, if you don't have write permissions on the card?
Exactly. So if this board could be public, right, or you might not be a member of the board. The person kind of looking at the board and using your power up might not actually be able to write data against the board. So when we're writing some data, shared data to an object, it's important to check that the member whom we're kind of acting on behalf of can actually write some data there. So there is a helpful little method for that guy. So let's look here. We've got this t.member can write to model. So let's check that. We're going to say if, and this says it returns synchronously, so that's good. We don't need to do any then on it. T.member can write to model. And the model we're going to be writing to is the card. So kind of exactly the example we've got here. So if they can write to the card, then that's perfect. Then we'll let it write to the card. If not, then, well, we won't cache it, but at least they'll still get to see their weather data. And so the last thing, we just want to know that this is all working. So what we're going to do is we'll log when we hit the cache, and we'll log when we miss the cache. And what we want to do is we'll do ourselves. All right, let's see if we've done it. So let's go ahead and we're going to say cache weather data in card plugin data. We're going to push that guy up. We can even close our terminal here. We don't need that. Come back over here. It's already building. That's great. Let's see. It should only take a couple seconds. Awesome. We're all built. Let's refresh our board and see what we've done. Did we break it?
So we will miss the cache the first time?
So we've got some cache misses and then some cache hits. So let's just clear this guy out and let's click in. So what we want to see, so we've fetched the data from their API, and we want to see that when I open up this card, we're not going to hit their API again. So we can even look at that in here. So I'm going to click this guy, and we should see no open weather map, and we don't. That's a good sign. And in our console, we should see cache hit.
Nice.
So we are now not over requesting from their API. We're only requesting it when we need it. And what we should actually see, right, unlike storing this kind of in session storage or locally in memory here, this data now is cached for everybody who views this board. So if I refresh, we shouldn't even get any cache misses because you've stored data directly in Trello's database. So there we go. We have cache hits for both of these guys. That's going to make these guys load way faster because we're not making a network request to a third-party service anymore. Trello's giving us the data right up front. And then once this data gets 30 minutes old, we'll go ahead and we'll fetch it from Fetch it from the great internet again. We can even, how much time do we have left, Bentley?
As much as you want.
Oh, as much as I want. Well, what I have in mind is we've cached this data for 30 minutes. But how do we make sure that 30 minutes from now that we fetch new data? Right? I mean, I don't know if you like me keep your Trello board open all day. How do we keep this data fresh? Does that interest you?
Sure.
How do we keep it fresh? So what we need for this to stay fresh is we need Trello to, well, there are multiple ways. We could update the plugin data ourselves every 30 minutes, but it kind of seems like it'd be easier to me to just have Trello ask us 30 minutes from now for some new data. So let's see if we could do that. Let's come in here. And what we want here is a dynamic badge. So this kind of reads like exactly what we want. Dynamic badges can have their function rerun after a set number of seconds defined by refresh, minimum of 10 seconds. So this is perfect. We can give Trello dynamic badges, let Trello kind of come back 30 minutes from now. So what that means is when we're giving Trello back these badges, we want to give it back these dynamic badges. So let's go ahead and change our badges to dynamic.
Does dynamic work for card detail badges?
Does dynamic work for card detail badges?
Oh, it does. Nice.
Our docs would say that it does. Docs are imperfect. Humans are imperfect. So, but in this case, I think we'll be good. So let's go ahead and we're going to swap these guys out for some dynamic badges. So we want our 3 badges, and these are going to be a little bit simpler. Well, they're a little bit more complex and simultaneously simpler. So we're going to say for each badge, that's going to have an object called dynamic, which is function. And then what that function runs, it's going to return the actual badge. And then we need to tell Trello in the badge bit, when should you re-request me? So you can see this little refresh 10 seconds. But the trick with this is this refresh is not going to recall your whole, it's not going to recall the card badge's capability. It's actually going to recall this dynamic function. So what we need is we need this dynamic function, which will also take a T, to give us back. How do we want to structure this?
So we need it to call our weather data function again. Yeah.
That sounds right. So we need this to return fetch weather data. Give it that T. And then this guy. Return this guy. He's going to look just like that. Do a little bit of extra copy paste here. So we've got that one. So we want 2 more. Break everything a little bit. So we're going to return this guy to that guy. Awesome. Let's close this guy up. Great. And then let's do this guy for the last one. Perfect. And so that's back here. We're going to kind of swap the narrative around here, since now this guy is going to be doing the fetching of the weather data. He will no longer take that. We're going to change his name. he can double check if the card has coordinates. So only if it has coordinates will we give back our new dynamic badges. That means that we can have this fetch, we'll have the fetch weather data continue to check because now let's simplify this guy because we've already checked. So we can now, all right, so let's leave it. All right, so we've got our get weather badges, and now we can actually simplify this guy. And we can have this guy return get weather badges. And same with this guy. All right, so we're going to call get weather badges with the T that was passed in. We'll load if the card has coordinates. If it doesn't, nothing to do. If it does, we're going to give Trello 3 dynamic badges this time. And then the last thing that we need to do with these dynamic badges is we need to tell Trello how often in seconds we want Trello to rerun this function here and get some new data. So what we need to do is for each of these guys, give it a refresh. And so again, this is in seconds. So we want 30 minutes worth of seconds. So we have 30 minutes. We're going to copy that guy. And we're going to use that same one. But just to check that it's working at first, tell it 10 seconds. We'll be real aggressive. We'll just keep fetching the weather. Now it'll keep getting it from cache, so we'll be okay. But we just want to check that our dynamic ones are working, and we'll be printing out our cache hits. So that's good. So we've redone this. So now every 30 minutes, Trello will re-ask us, and we'll reload the weather. So let's go ahead. Use dynamic badges, fetch weather every 30 minutes. All right, push that. Let's let this guy chew on that. There it goes. All right, we're all built. Almost all built. Site is live. That's what we like to see. Is it live? You say you're building. No, published. Good. All right, let's see if we broke it. Good. Nice. We have not broke it. So we see our little cache hits. So I'm going to clear this out, and we're going to wait 10 seconds, and we're going to see if Trello re-requests our badges here. And there we go. So we've re-requested our badges. So we'll clear it out. We'll wait another 10 seconds. And we should think about, well, why are we getting 3 of these guys for each? It's because we're showing 3 badges on each of these cards, and each of them is being requested each 10 seconds. All right, so we don't actually want Trello to do it every 10 seconds, so we're going to go ahead and swap these guys back. 30 minutes, 60 seconds per minute. Actually, all right. We can remove our little cache lines, and we'll call it a day. Here's our statements. And we can push that guy. All right, and with that, in just under an hour and a half, we've built our own little power-up that takes cards that have locations added to them and augments those locations with some weather data for the current location. a fun trick here is that even if we turn the maps power up off, the card will still have its location. So we'll still get that weather data for those cards. Of course, we won't have the fancy little map anymore, so we don't really know where that is. Let's turn that power back on. So we've got our little maps back. There is plenty more to explore, plenty more to try, but this is just kind of a quick way to show you how to get going with power-ups, how to use them to show a little bit of information that Trello otherwise wouldn't have shown you. You can hopefully imagine using this for own internal resources and augmenting cards with whatever you would find useful. This repository, as we mentioned at the beginning, is totally open source. If you would like to use this repository as your own starter project, you can do that. We will include this link from our documentation, and we will include it in the description for this video. You can come to GitHub, and as long as you have an account, you can click this fork button here, which is essentially the clone or copy this repository, add it to my account, and then you can make your own changes. And you can set up your own netlo-fi deploys or whatever service you'd like. Because this is a static application, you could also set it up with GitHub Pages if that's more preferable for your workflow. I think we're good to sign off, Bentley.
Sweet. Thank you, Matt, for teaching us, taking the time. That was like painless. We ran into 0 snags.
Well, one snag. We forgot to turn on the capability.
The smallest
the most embarrassing of snags.
Flipping the switch. We can do that. Very easy. Cool. Well, we will be back at some point in the future building more power-ups, having more fun. So yeah, let's call it a day. See ya.
Thanks for joining us.